James Harden opts in. The Flyers get their guy at 7. We'll tell you why it's well worth the risk. And the Phillies take the brooms out in Chicago and win 9 straight road games. We'll be back in 10 seconds with all that and much, much more. What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome back to the Phaithful Phanatics Show live here on DSM Media's Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter channels. Guys, if you are new to the channel, make sure to check us out on Twitter first at DSM_media. Hit that follow button. We greatly appreciate it. And while you're over on the channel, make sure to check the link tree out in our bio. It will take you to every social media platform we are available on. If you guys want to be interactive throughout today's show or any of our shows here at DSM, make sure you check out the YouTube link specifically. Subscribe to the new DSM Media Philadelphia YouTube channel. That's where we're live here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning on the Phaithful Fanatic Show. It is also the new home of every DSM pregame live we will be bringing to you guys in the future. I'm one half of your host, Dylan Davis. You can find me on Twitter at DylanJD98. To my right, my faithful co-host, Scotty. You can find him as well at Scotty Drown. My man, happy Friday. What's going on? And this might be the biggest show of the summer that we're going to do right here because there is a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it may be the biggest show, but I would say the biggest show will come after Harden is traded, if and when that happens. But nonetheless, it is the biggest show so far of the summer, and I'm excited, man. I feel like there's a little concern with it, right? Anytime a guy like Harden's walking out the door or getting traded out the door, but there's also an exciting optimism that comes with it, and an exciting freedom that comes with that as well. And being able to get something back for him. So I'm interested to get into that. The Phillies swept. They're obviously rolling. Taijuan Walker gets his 5th straight win as a starter.
He's got 9 wins on the year.
It's ridiculous, man. And once again, the pitching just coming up huge in this game. And that's just such a great sign for a team that was pinpointed to rely on their bats. And that's the way they've been for the last couple of seasons here. But Nolan Smith, we'll get to talk about him a little bit. I'm excited for that.
And some puck.
Yeah, some puck, man. Some Flyers. I actually wore my Flyers shirt yesterday, prideful. I was mowing the yard.
Look at you.
And I had to rock the orange, man. Maybe I'll throw the orange hat on here at the end of the show.
Absolutely.
And really get festive. But yeah, it's time for the rebuild, and they're doing it the right way. So you got to be excited for that. I'm sure Dives, right? Mr. Crockpot,
yes, sir.
King of the rebuild. He's
loving
loves that, but
he's loving it.
Doing it the right way, man.
Yes, sir, man. But let's start with the big news that obviously broke, just around 5 p.m. yesterday. James Harden had a very, very important decision to make at that 5 p.m. deadline on Thursday, and that was whether to opt in or opt out of his player option for the upcoming 2023-2024 season for the 76ers. And just the assumption, right, all along was that he was going to opt out and look for a more long-term, higher paying type of deal. He took around a $15 million pay cut last year to help out the Sixers and build this roster and try to win. Come back this year, everyone's expecting, will he get the max? Will the Sixers try to get him on a 2-year, $100 mil, $90 mil type of deal? And he opts in. But the opt-in does not come with the future prospect of wanting to stay here in Philadelphia. It is so that both sides can work on a trade out of Philly. Obviously, the Clippers emerging, his hometown where he wants to go back to. Evidently, they're emerging as the favorites right now to make a package for James Harden. But Scotty, first and foremost, before we get into any trade rumors, expectations, everything like that, how surprised are you at this was the landing spot? This is what it's come to after just a year and a half of James Harden's time here in Philadelphia post Ben Simmons trade.
I'm very surprised. And you look back at it holistically, hindsight's 2020, of course, but you look back at it and you just think, how did we get here? Right? Like, how did we get to this point where once again we have a perennial all-star, right? Ben Simmons was an all-star. James Harden, obviously, a step above that, a Hall of Famer future. future Hall of Famer, I should say. We're here in this situation again. Embiid's about to change teammates again as far as the main road dog there.
Right, his co-star.
I'm surprised, man, because what this ultimately means when Harden has to opt back in and work with the Sixers to get out of Philadelphia, it means that his market dried up really quickly. It means that Houston wasn't really as interested as all of these rumors made them out to be, right? Any team that had money, cap space. Obviously, there's not a ton of teams that have cap space that are ideal situations for Harden, who says he's trying to contend, right? That's the main driving force here. So when you look at it from that perspective, I thought that was interesting that the market dried up. He had to ultimately come back to the Sixers, work with them, opt in. But I was surprised, man. I thought maybe he opts in, maybe just rides out this season, tries to build his value back up, tries to go at it one more time with Embiid and go for that ring. But it obviously didn't work out like that. And now we're hearing that Harden is disgruntled by the way everything has been handled, which is just, it's honestly hilarious. It's hilarious that he's disgruntled by the way things are handled because his camp put the smoke out starting at Christmas time, right? Christmas morning, we get it dropped in our head that Harden's interested in going back to Houston. Now, hindsight, once again, 2020, that was just put out there to drive up his value, ultimately get him more money. So now I'm wondering, with all of these tweets coming out, these rumors from credible sources saying the Sixers were never sold on James Harden as being part of their future. That's interesting because I've seen people say, if you thought that, then you should have traded for Tyrese Halliburton. The truth is, the Sixers may not have thought that at the time when they traded for James Harden. Well, it may have been what transpired over the last year and a half, him slightly regressing. I mean, he's obviously regressed in a sense as far as his first step, finishing in the lane, and his scoring ability. So when you see that regression, maybe the Sixers are ready to turn the cheek on him. And they obviously are, right? And it kind of makes sense. But I wouldn't go all the way back and just say, they shouldn't have done this, they shouldn't have done that. At the time, it's James Harden versus Tyrese Halliburton. Didn't know what he was going to be at the time anyways. It's interesting to see Daryl Morey kind of turning the cheek against James Harden. That's supposed to be his guy throughout time, right? And it's been the Philadelphia Rockets. And now Daryl Morey is kind of turning the cheek and saying, no, we gotta put our foot down. This is the line.
Thankfully.
And thankfully, man, thankfully. And to that point, I'm excited about what can come from this because, like you said, you get something in return, and that's not something that we knew we would get ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said a couple of very interesting things in there, which is his market dried up, obviously, with Houston and around the league, but I think it also tells you that it dried up here in Philadelphia, as you alluded to at the end of your statement there. Like the Sixers had no vision with him in their long-term future, and like you said, so there's a few things here. They may have just like this Boston series and hell, the Brooklyn series, because he wasn't good this play. He wasn't good outside of 2 games in the playoffs. So maybe this little run here made Daryl Morey sit back and say he has regressed. Like whether I want to believe it or not, he has regressed. Maybe Nick Nurse, right? Him and Harden apparently got along, and Harden, liked what Nick Nurse had to say and his vision for the offense in their meeting. Nick Nurse had great things to say about him in his introductory press conference, but maybe Nick Nurse was like, hey man, from the outside point of view, this isn't going to work long-term, for me here, right? With him.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that you did give it 2 runs at the playoffs with James Harden. Like when all the Tyrese Halliburton noise, you gave it 2 honest tries at trying to win a championship with Harden and Embiid. Didn't work out. You didn't get any further than you did pre-James Harden. But you had the thought process of this pushed us closer. Let's run it. You tried 2 times, didn't get any further. It's time to move on with his regression. Yeah. It's just funny though, all the reports coming out, like you said. So the first thing is that he opts in and they're working on a trade together, and this team's interested, and that team might be interested, and yada, yada, yada. And then John Clark reports, because it is interesting that it was an opt-in and not a sign-and trade, right? The opt-in gives the Sixers the leverage of, hey, he could come back. So John Clark reports that Harden opted in for the security of going to a contending team or remaining here in Philadelphia for one more year and trying to win a championship.
Yeah.
And this morning it comes out that James Harden is very, very disgruntled and displeased with how the Philadelphia 76ers organization has handled his, free agency campaign and everything like that leading up to today's 5 or 6 p.m. start time, right?
Yeah.
Man, give me a goddamn break. To your point, you know damn well it's him and his camp leaking all of this shit going back to before Christmas time about Houston and everything like that, trying to drive up the price for you. And that's fair. That's business, right? That's how business works. That's how the league works. That's how sports work. Okay? That's an agent's job to try to get the most for his player, right?
Absolutely.
However, you then cannot be displeased with the Sixers when they're not willing to give you that long-term deal that no one else is willing to give you. Because if the Houston thing was as real as you had alluded to, he'd be running back there the second the Sixers didn't say 3 years, 180 million or something.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you think that the Sixers ultimately may have pivoted during this process when they see that Houston is not going to give him a multi-year max type of deal? Like, once you see what the market is for James, you hear there's not much attention. There's no interest in giving him a max deal, multi-year type of contract. Maybe the Sixers look at that and they're like, well, nobody else is doing it. Why would we give it to you? Let's go for this one more time. Let's figure this out. Then James Harden's like, well, y'all don't believe in me? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
right. It's the reverse in terms of the team side of things compared to James Harden, right? James Harden tried to use Houston as leverage. Oh, Houston's going to give me this and drive up Philly's price. Well, now on the team's point of view, well, Houston's only going to give you this, which means nothing. So we're only going to give you this. And Harden's like, oh, they hit him with like the reverse Uno card, right? Like, no. It doesn't work the way you think it's gonna.
That's the thing, man. Like you said it earlier in the show, or actually you said it before the show started. Excuse me. You said, this isn't Tobias Harris that we're now looking to trade. This is James Harden. And I think what is kind of being perceived oddly to me is that the Sixers have no leverage here, right? And you said it just now with the John Clark tweet, basically how Harden opted in. It's not a sign and trade where we have to get this contract done, or he might be stuck with us if we do that multi-year contract. No, he opted in for the $35.6 million. He's a Sixer right now. So, yeah, he can do the Ben Simmons thing. He could sit out if we can't find
He can do the James Harden thing.
He could do the James Harden thing. He could make himself fatter than what he, or a little more out of shape than what he usually is. But nonetheless, he's a Sixer right now, and there's nothing forcing the Sixers' hands aside from needing to know what you need to get for your team. That is the rush there. But you could argue that's the same thing for the Clippers. That's the same thing for the Knicks.
Right.
Everybody needs to know what they're going into free agency with. So there is an urgency to get the deal done. But I wouldn't say all the urgency is on the Sixers side, man.
No, absolutely not. So let's get into that. Let's get into the meat of this topic, because no one cares anymore how James Harden feels or how he's displeased with the Sixers.
My man
now
just said
all our attention. What was that?
My man just said it in the group chat. Fuck James Harden, man. Like, honestly, bro.
It's getting to that point, bro. Now listen, he
hard, man.
I know his market dried up, but he essentially kind of, whether he meant to or not, did the Sixers a favor by opting in and allowing this opportunity to get something back.
Fair.
And it helps their cap and everything. But again, how much of that was, this is Daryl Morey, we're going to work together, and how much of it was, get me the hell out of here. This is my only way to get out of here. But let's get into the focus of this, and that is, what can you get back for James Harden? The urgency to get something done. We talked about it before we went live here. We have what? 9-10 hours until
Yeah.
free agency ultimately begins. So if you're Daryl Morey, we know he's going to remain patient. He did it with Ben Simmons. He's apparently going to do it with Tobias Harris. He's not going to force anything. He's going to wait for, the deal to kind of come to him and get the most out of what he thinks he can get. And that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, if for some reason you came away with 2 role players and salary filler, that needs to be done ASAP.
Yeah.
Because you can't allow this to get 4, 5, 6 a week into free agency, because if you come away with money to use it free agency, well, that's all dried up now. Now that well's dried up, right? So it's interesting to kind of sit back and think, well, does a deal get done this afternoon? Does one get done once free agency starts and blah, blah, blah? I sent you the report of Daryl. There's a lot of rumors. Basically why I brought up Tobias Harris before the show started was there's the rumors, especially with the Clippers being linked, of, well, why would they trade Paul George? Because that's where our eyeballs go to, right? Paul George, right?
Yeah.
Why would they trade Paul George and bring in James Harden? Does that push the Clippers more towards championship? Wouldn't you want to pair those 3 together, right, with Kawhi? So then if you're not trading Paul George to me, who am I getting? Well, you're throwing out names like Marcus Morris and Robert Covington and Norman Powell, and, you'll have some salary cap opened up and blah, blah, blah. Well, dude, those are Tobias Harris trade rumor names.
Yeah.
We're talking about James Harden. So excuse me, like at that point, I'd rather retain James Harden.
Yeah.
Unless it meant, you bring those guys in, you get a boatload of money, and Daryl somehow brings in whoever. But the link I sent you had said, that ain't going to do. And Daryl Morey won't pull the trigger on that until he already has another deal in place for a star, in quotes, maybe Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
A lot of movement could be going on over the next couple days, today, whatever the case may be, Scotty. What do you feel kind of just the market is for James Harden? What would you be willing to move him for at this point?
It's an interesting question nonetheless. Where I'll start here, because PG would be the goal, right? Like that's the easiest swap that you could make. If they're willing to take on Harden and Tobias. Now, I don't know what that relationship is like with Harden and Tobias. It always seemed to me like they didn't get along on the court. It seemed like Harden was always yelling at Tobias on the court for doing something stupid. But if they got moved together, PG would have to be part of that deal.
Absolutely.
The salaries match. So that's something to keep in mind. Paul George, man, you say, why would the Clippers do it? I would argue that they would do it because James Harden, he's a different player than Paul George. He's a guy that can facilitate. He can connect their team in a sense. You already have your 3-and-D type of wing in Kawhi Leonard. And Paul George comes with his fair share of risk and injury concern. Not that Harden doesn't. Certainly doesn't mean that he doesn't. But I get why the Clippers would be hesitant to include him in a deal. You want to make that big 3. It makes sense to me. There's a fine line of a deal here. And I think Daryl Morey, like you said, he's a patient guy. How patient can you be with those things in mind of the free agency about to start?
The Clippers need to get this deal done by July 1st, basically, or at the end of July 1st.
Or they're going to have to include more to get James Harden. So it's in their best interest to get this done as soon as possible.
Exactly.
So, like, the fine line for me, Dylan, is like you said, Daryl Morey can sit here. He can be patient. He can try to get another star like Zach LaVine. He can try to include a third team. Maybe you get a point guard and get pieces from the Clippers, right? A point guard from a third team and pieces from the Clippers. I saw somebody mention, maybe you get the Wizards involved with Tyus Jones, or you get the Portland Trailblazers involved with Anthony Simons. There's even been the Dame rumors, right? Which is certainly a possibility at this point. But I would say the fine line comes with a clean trade between the Sixers, and the fine line is Paul George plus whatever else they throw in, right? A Marcus Morris, whatever they need to throw in to make themselves feel comfortable. And then the next tier down, which is a deal that I would ultimately accept. But like I'm saying, it's a fine line, because when do you accept this deal? When do you accept that this is the best deal for this situation? That deal would ultimately be Terrence Mann, Norman Powell, and I would need either Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, and I would need draft compensation, man. Second round picks, late first, whatever the case may be. That would be a deal that I would ultimately do. You get 3 legitimate players that will be in your rotation. Terrence Mann could literally start next to Tyrese Maxey. They complement each other perfectly. And Norman Powell's just a walking bucket. So, like, that's something I would do. But it's like I'm not gonna just jump out of the gym to do that deal if I'm Daryl Morey. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna explore. I'm gonna be as patient as I possibly can be. So it's really about what is the Sixers deadline to get this done? It doesn't mean that it's when the moratorium ends today and free agency starts. That might not be the Sixers deadline. Maybe the Sixers deadline is 2 days after free agency starts, before the free agency pool is completely cleared, right? But for the Clippers, like you said, to get under that second apron to avoid being penalized with all the tax penalties that come with the new CBA, they need to get this deal done before that new CBA kicks in, or they're going to have to give up a lot more in order to get it done, which maybe that's when you start talking Paul George for James Harden, because they have to at that point in order to get him.
It also, if they do not move Paul George in said deal, it puts the Clippers in cap hell next year. So this would be a 1-year run at a championship. If it doesn't work, they got to blow
3 guys that are injury prone. Let's be honest.
So there's a lot of concern from that point. The Sixers point, man, that package, I just don't know. I don't know how to feel, because there's a few ways to look at this, right? There's a way of saying let Tyrese Maxey get the ball more, put the ball in Tyrese Maxey's hands. It's still Joel's team, and you add 3 valuable, role pieces around those 2 stars. And with Nick Nurse, maybe you beat the Boston Celtics if James Harden isn't that bad, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. There's another way to look at it that's just not good enough. And you're not better off with Norman Powell and Robert Covington than you are with James Harden. The other side of things, that is gnawing at me of trying to figure out how I feel is James Harden could have walked. And if James Harden walks, not only do you lose that player in that piece, but you also have salary cap issues for him walking and not opting in. So if you trade him for Norman Powell and salary filler and this player, you at least get something of value in return for a guy that you could have got nothing for. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. It's just holistically, the Sixers aren't a better team if that's the trade package, and then those guys and assets are not flipped for something else. Now, maybe that's what Daryl has up his sleeve, as that article alluded to. Maybe you trade for a Terrence Mann or Norman Powell or both, and picks and blah, 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 and you can throw that at a Chicago Bulls team and get Zach LaVine and throw Tobias Harris in the mix, or whatever the case may be. I'm not sure. But the Sixers are definitely, in my opinion, not a better team if those guys are just retained for this season for James Harden. So it's a very iffy feeling I'm in right now. We got 2 comments of the 2 guys that Wendy threw out there, and I sent you the video, and you said yes to one, you said no to the other because of who would be involved. So Pastor Rems is saying Lillard and picks for Tobias and Harden. No, if Lillard was in the equation, I think what Wendy was alluding to was that it would be what I had just wrapped up with, that they'll make a trade with the Clippers or whoever, younger assets. They'd have to throw Maxey in probably, and or Tobias, and you package all those assets together for Damian Lillard, not these 2. Now, there is the other thing where if Portland wants to go in a rebuild, you eat the 1-year salary of these 2 players, and then they're both off the books, and Dame's off the books, and now you have all this money. So maybe there's possibly some intrigue there, but no, I did not see that happening. Then he brings up Kyrie Irving. And he brings up Kyrie Irving, possibly being interested in evaluating what's going on at Philly if Harden is to be moved. And I just don't know how to feel about it, man, because on the court, it is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Off the court, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm talking fit.
Yeah.
And I'm talking Kyrie as this free thinker that he is. And I'm putting him in front of the Philadelphia media. Huh.
Yeah. That's
Huh.
the thing. Philadelphia media and Kyrie do not mesh, man. That's
Because
the one
then when
thing that
something is said wrong, does Kyrie Irving show up to work the next 2 days? That's the fear I have with his
yeah.
past.
Yeah.
On the
No,
court, it is a
I'm
no
with you.
effing brainer.
I'm with you.
I
And
don't care what his thought, what he thinks about the flat Earth and this and that, well, whatever. But I'm talking like, will he show up to work if things hit a roadblock in terms of media, the fan base, everything like that?
I think he's hit a point in his career where he has to, right? There's a reason that Kyrie's market has dried up as well. There's just not many teams that are, as far as contenders, that have been interested in
But he
Kyrie from what we've
scares me
heard as
because
well.
does he even care?
I know that's
Is
the other
he
side
so
of it.
out there that he thinks like,
That's the other side of it.
I don't care.
He may not care, and that's the risk that
Like
you take with a
Antonio
guy like
Brownish.
Kyrie Irving. Yeah, and like you were saying, the Philadelphia media and Kyrie Irving, they do not match at all. Although the talent it's one of those situations where the talent exceeds the fit. You do it because that's a surplus in talent that you can bring in. So it's ultimately worth the risk when you have Joel Embiid on your team. Ultimately, so yeah, I mean, I would be open to Kyrie Irving, but to your point earlier, man, I do think there's a world. Which I am a Tyrese Maxey truther. I'm a believer all the way, and there's a reason I wouldn't include him in a deal for Dame Lillard at this point because
I'm doing it.
I think part of this conversation and part of this situation is the belief in Tyrese Maxey. I think that's part of the reason that the Sixers are willing to ultimately trade James Harden away and give him the keys in a sense. But to your point, I get why the man, pal, that type of deal is unappealing, especially from James Harden. And, it's just hard to make that deal without exploring every single option and going up until the deadline.
I don't believe Daryl will do.
Right? So yeah, it is a little concerning in that sense of how long does this drag out? What else does it linger into? And then other things that I wonder as well, man, is Joel Embiid part of this? Did he sign off on, hey, we're moving, James Harden, we may get this, and this back. Tyrese Maxey is going to be a bigger part of the team. This fits Nick Nurse's system, blah, blah, blah. Did they include Joel Embiid in this decision to not give James Harden a long-term contract? Because the other side of this, man, as you kind of alluded to in a sense, is, you go into next season, maybe Tyrese Maxey isn't who I thought he was. Maybe he, goes into his fourth year, stunts his development. You have Nick Nurse, who's a new coach. It's a new system. No Sam Cassell, another, or another teammate gone from the situation. Maybe Tyrese Maxey falls flat on his face. And then, Joel Embiid demands that trade out of Philadelphia because this thing went sour. There is that world in it, and it does make you wonder, how does this affect Joel Embiid, who seemed to like playing with James Harden in a sense?
Yeah, no, and this is a great point here too. Like, there would be nothing worse than a disgruntled, disinterested James Harden on the floor next season.
Often looks that way anyway.
But he also, dude, at 34, can't get an extension, has to enter free agency at age 35. He can't afford to sit out wherever he is.
Yeah, like take a year off.
There's no shot.
Yeah, no.
And if I'm Daryl, like, I know that's how the league works, man. And I know that's basically how we got James.
Yeah.
However, if I'm Daryl, you can continue to sit, bro. You will sit here all year unless I get the deal I want. Now, it sounds kind of petty because it's like, wouldn't you prefer at least Terrence Mann and Norman Powell if he's going to sit out all year? But at the end of the day, I don't know if I'm just going to, I don't know. I'm kind of petty like that. I want to just give in.
It depends, because like it really, it's that fine line, man, and only Daryl Morey would really know in this case. what is actually being offered. He's on the phone with teams. They're saying,
Right.
this is the most we will give up for James Harden.
Right.
So only he can know. But
it's
I'm
also
telling you,
that
there's
one
something
article
that intrigues me about Terrence Mann and this Sixers team. I just like the kid. He got an uptick in
me
minutes in
too.
the
I
playoffs
like him.
last year. Shot 47.4% from the 3-point line, man.
Dude.
And this dude is a 6'5" combo guard. It's very interesting with Tyrese Maxey.
Especially if you could bring in Powell and Mann, Powell, and Covington. Don't get me wrong, those are three guys that can contribute. But again, maybe not Mann. Maybe he's a tick above what we were expecting.
Yeah.
But we're talking Tobias Harris packages. And that's the part that really rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
But like you said, if Maxey takes that leap and gets more responsibility, and Joel is still Joel Embiid right this year, and you bring in those guys, and you keep D Melton, you keep Tucker, and you bring back Paul Reed, you do have a much deeper team than you had last year. It just all depends on if you're better. Now, the last thing before we move on here, Scotty, because we do have a lot of other stuff to talk about. And no, you're 100% right, man. They all fit Nick Nurse's system. Two things from the James Harden point of view. It is intriguing to me, that article that I sent you about, man, is Daryl cooking something up behind the scenes? Because maybe this is the type of move, but then two of these guys and Tobias Harris, and maybe Jaden Springer get packaged for somewhere else.
Yeah, give me
like a Zach LaVine.
Yeah,
there was this Tyrese Maxey, Embiid, and that player here in Philadelphia,
and then that's a lot better looking.
Right? Exactly.
I do think that's a great point that kind of gets left out, that we've kind of looked over in this situation, where maybe if you have a Tobias deal in place, now you do pull that trigger on the James Harden deal.
You've seen those reports, right? Like you've seen the Woj or Shams report of this is the deal, and then right below it, blah, blah, and blah, blah are not expected to stay in Philadelphia. Hold on. And it's like, they're on another flight somewhere else. The last thing I wanted to ask you, man, how does this affect Tobias Harris? Are we really expecting two biggest trades this offseason for the Sixers? And we're talking basically a completely different roster? Because if you're moving James for, let's say, a deal like that, where you're talking 2-3 new role players that all play, and then you still want to move Tobias for 2 role players or something, you're talking a whole new roster with Embiid and Maxey. Is that reasonable anymore? Or are you keeping Tobias Harris for the 1 year if you move James Harden? Does Tobias Harris fit the Sixers better without James Harden?
Right.
As kind of a third scoring option.
It's something to consider, man. And once again, it just depends what's being offered for Harden. But I think it's something to consider, because you would have more room for Tobias to operate on the offense. Obviously have the ball in his hands a little bit more. That was part of what hindered Tobias and put him in a corner. But
now I can't forget about his crumble cookie comments.
I know. And that's part of it. What I could ultimately see, because I do think coming into this situation with Nick Nurse, I could see them wanting to start completely fresh. So to answer your question, I could see them trading both of them if they can get value that they feel meets the mark. But something else that is really interesting to me, man, the idea of pairing PJ Tucker and Harden and trading them both out of Philadelphia, getting off that PJ Tucker contract, because let's be honest, man, PJ Tucker is not very appealing without James Harden. Without a guy that gets him in position and makes him something on offense. Otherwise, he's nothing. He's literally a zero on offense. So I would be open to moving him with Harden just so you could get back even a little bit.
Anyone going to take that deal, though?
I don't know. I really don't know. If you're the Clippers, for example, if you're getting James Harden and PJ Tucker, maybe you're willing to move off of something better, right? I don't know. It's an interesting thought, but I do see PJ Tucker as somebody that could be thrown in there. Is he a guy that wants to be in Philly if Harden's not there, right? That's a question we have to ask ourselves as well. I don't know. I feel like you do, even so. even if you do move Harden, which we obviously feel is going to happen, it seems like it's going to happen shortly, but I feel like you have to move one of PJ or Tobias fit wise. I feel like you just have to,
That's fair.
especially if we're talking about that deal from the Clippers. The bottom, the lowest deal that I would accept, that 3-player deal with Man and Powell included, you clear out a spot in the starting lineup
Absolutely.
of
Because
Harden
again,
and another player in that starting lineup, I feel.
talking about Nick Nurse's system, one of the major flaws this roster had last year, whether we wanted to admit it in the moment or not, is you can't have your 7-foot center and then 2 power forwards on the
Yeah.
floor that both, I mean, Tobias is athletic.
Yeah.
He's not wing NBA prototype athletic.
That's a good way to
And
put
PJ
it.
Tucker isn't athletic. So, like,
Yeah.
you have two really unathletic power forwards on the floor at the same time. Yeah. Harden was slower and didn't have that jump. They lack athleticism.
Yeah.
Maxey, smaller guard, fast as hell. Yeah. He's not jumping out of the gym at you. So that's where you would have to fix that, to your point. Or PJ goes to the bench.
Yeah, that's another solution. That is a fair solution to the situation, man. I'm just thinking, you add premium 3-point shooting with that deal. Because, I mean, you look at Norman Powell, 39.7% from 3. Terrence Mann was 38.9% in the regular season from 3. I mean, it sounds nice, right? Like, I don't know. We're going to see how this plays out, because I say that I would accept that deal. But as we've been hinting at throughout this show, there's a fine line, and we could very well be surprised what the Sixers are actually able to get back in a
That's
sense.
what I'm saying. And again,
especially if they pair Tobias in that deal, and that creates an opening of huge amounts of money.
Right now, you do not just move James Harden for the sake of moving James Harden.
Yeah.
So does this deal make the Sixers better?
Right.
Those two? Probably not. No.
Yeah. Like, if anything, it makes them the same.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Again, you can argue what they do well and the fit and athleticism for Man, but are those two, instead of James, if you added those two to James Harden, we'd be talking. Like, if you're replacing James Harden with those two, is that pushing you past Boston in the second round?
If you bring in Terrence Mann and you have Tyrese Maxey, you are holistically counting on them both making a jump next year, right? Terrence Mann in a starting role, bigger minutes, making an uptick in production. Tyrese Maxey, same thing, but at a higher
now, Powell and Melton off the bench, like, I like
it. It's nice. It's just, where is that? You need one more piece of, like, firepower, right? Like, something else. Levine is the perfect guy, I feel, right? If they could ultimately flip Tobias in some, like you said, like we said earlier, right? Like, you trade Harden to the Clippers for Man, Powell, and whatever cap filler and some draft compensation. Take that cap filler, pair it with Tobias, or take one of the other people. Maybe it's Marcus Morris or Robert Covington. Take him, pair him with Tobias and, like, Jaden Springer. Send that out for Zach LaVine. Something like that, right? Mm-hmm. That is, like, best case scenario.
Right.
But I would say, man, when we think of what we were discussing, and this is the last thing I'll say on it, I know we got to move on. When we think of what we've been discussing up until this point, how we were kind of in between on Harden, like, the 3-year deal. Like, do we really want to be with back?
Like, that's
36-year-old Harden? This is kind of best case scenario from a risk perspective, right? Where you can get something back for this guy and don't lose him.
Well, and when you watch teams like the Heat, now let's just think about this. Let's just say that was the move, right? You get Powell, Man, and Covington, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Now let's look at this roster. Embiid, Maxey, let's say they keep Tobias, PJ, Melton, Springer, Reed, Powell, Man, Covington. And when you look at a team like Miami, who was just able to get to the NBA Finals and win a game, and you see their talent, right?
Yeah.
It does make you think, like, maybe fit wise, but again, it just on paper, it 110% does not make you better. So
Yeah.
We'll circle back around to it. Free agency opens up tonight around 5 p.m., 6 p.m. I forget. And then, maybe Harden's out. We'll see. But we do have to move on. And we have to move on to the team right over their shoulder, Scotty, right here. The orange and black. Dude, listen. I know we don't talk about the Flyers a lot, really at all, this past year here on the Phaithful Fanatics show.
Not very
we have
fun.
our pregame lives. You can call it bandwagon if you want to, but like this team was bad, man, and you knew they were bad, and ownership and management was a cluster F, and they're turning a new leaf. Danny Briere, Jonesy, they're being open with the fan base, they're rebuilding, and they did something special for me the other night. And I texted you this, and I actually tweeted it out. Before they made the selection, they have an opportunity to do something to draw me back in. And yes, it's not for this year, and it ain't for next year. Hell, it might not even be for the year after that, Scotty. But the Flyers with the 7th overall pick, let me not butcher this name. I believe it is Matvei Michkov out of the KHL, okay? Matvei Michkov is a risk. A, for the fact that he has a 3-year deal in the KHL. So he's most likely playing all 3 years of that out. And then you have the geopolitical issues with his area and just even getting him to be able to come over here and stick and play.
Yeah.
I believe he's going to get here. I believe that he wanted to be here from all the interviews I've listened to and listened to Danny Briere talk and listened to, him through a translator talk, right? I believe he wants to win here. I believe he somewhat hand-selected Philadelphia. It's a risk, but it's a risk they had to take, and here's why. Dude, this kid, and I'm not trying to come off as like I've watched Mitch. No, I haven't. But I'm going off of what I've looked into, what I've read, what the highlights, everything. This kid is the best Russian prospect in 15 plus years. Like Ovechkin, hold on. Let me read these numbers for you real quick. Let me pull this up. Sorry.
So he had 16 points in 7 games.
So from Yariv Wallach, he tweets out, Michkov at 16 and 17 years old here, playing against grown men in the KHL, Russia's league, second best in the world. He has the most points per game of any Russian prospect ever. Broke every record. That includes Ovechkin, Malkin, Burr, Panarin, etc. In any other draft that does not include Connor Bedard, who is Connor McDavid 8.0, apparently, this kid is the consensus #1 overall talent. Consensus across the board. He was basically the consensus #2. Yeah. It's just teams that, maybe are trying to speed up their timeline are not willing to take that risk and or wait 3+ years. But the Flyers can afford to do so, Scotty. The timeline almost matches up perfectly. I mean, would you love for the Flyers to be ready 2 years from now? Absolutely. That's just not the case. A rebuild isn't going to take a year and a half. It's just not going to happen. You don't win that way in today's NHL. They can afford to wait. He can afford to wait to come over and wait on them. And they needed a star. They needed a quote-unquote game changer, right? And everything points to this kid being that. Claude Giroux is going to go down as one of the all-time great Philadelphia Flyers. Probably one of my favorite Flyers ever. He's the captain. Claude Giroux, that star talent, the star level talent that we needed. No, he wasn't.
D-Rap's right. That's how a rebuild goes, unless you're an expansion team.
Right.
No, I think it's exciting, man. You hit all the nails in the head regarding this draft selection. I was just reading about him just to kind of learn a little bit more. I'm a novice hockey fan. You said bandwagon at the beginning. I don't want to use that term, but it is in a sense.
I know. I meant because we weren't talking about them when they're bad, but we'll talk. No, that's not. But it's hard to listen. Forget bad.
I'm not a
It's hard
hockey
to talk
truther,
about what was
like, to talk
happening
about hockey when
when
they're
you
bad.
hated the ownership. Hell, you wanted Comcast to sell the team. You
Right.
hated the GM. The GM's handing out bad deal after bad deal after bad deal. Why am I going to waste my breath talking about this team? That's the point.
Looking at what he did, though, I see what you mean because, obviously I'm not going to have a frame of reference on
No,
this
but Sky,
Russian
just watch.
league,
If you haven't,
but
just watch a little bit of them.
a grown man Russian league, right? You're talking about the KHL, 22 goals in 22 games in a league with grown
If you
men. He had
haven't seen any of his tape, just
20
go on
points
YouTube and watch a little.
in 27 games, starting the season as a 17-year-old. But really, what I'm reading that excites me is kind of what you insinuated at. He kind of forced his way to Philadelphia in a sense. Now, the idea was he wants a big market. That's what he wants to be a part of. Now, Philadelphia fit that cause, right? But he denied workouts with a couple different teams, I believe. He apparently declined to meet with them because the market wasn't big enough. I think Arizona was one of the teams that specifically was mentioned as him not meeting with them.
I don't know
all
how the
because
Flyers
it's not
snuck
big
him
enough.
into the area or into the country, but they
Yeah.
apparently met with him twice this past week,
brought
and
him in.
nobody knew about it.
Yeah, brought him in, had him go into like the stadium, showed him around, really gave him a warm welcome from the sound of it. But you just listen to some of the things he says. He talks about his dad that passed away earlier this year in April. He said he just wants to fulfill the goal that his dad had set out for him, which was to hold up a Stanley Cup. You read this quote from him here. So, my biggest wish is that I want to come to Philadelphia and I want to help them win a Stanley Cup. I know they've been waiting a long time for one. That's my goal. That's why I'm coming here. And you're talking about a 17, 18-year-old kid that is ready to come over to the NHL, play for the Philadelphia Flyers. Like, he's not saying I want to go to the NHL and play. I want to go to the Flyers and I want to bring a Stanley Cup to them. Now, obviously, any kid that gets drafted in any sport is going to say that, right? But to hear him say that, to see the actions that he put into action before the draft even got there and ultimately make his way to Philadelphia, you can't say more about that. And you couldn't be happier at the potential that lies with this, right? And you mentioned rebuilding the right way, Briere, Jonesy, doing it the right way, completely clearing house, right? And starting over, creating a fresh culture and bringing in talent. I think that's the biggest thing, man. A lot of that
Young
that old way of doing things, you're bringing in, guys from other teams that were developed elsewhere. They're not bought into this Flyers organization, and they ultimately flounder out. They're just
and you hand them horrible deals.
Horrible deals.
Terrible deals.
Talent. You're paying over the mark for guys that are not worth the money.
Like, I don't know if you've seen anything about it, but and I like the Kevin Hayes signing when he came over here, right? And Kevin Hayes was given a really, really bad deal by Chuck Fletcher.
Yeah.
And so the other day the Flyers moved him for a 6th round draft pick. Okay.
Yeah.
And not everyone, but a lot of people were upset because they heard rumors of what he could potentially get on the trade block and etc. They come away with a 6th round pick and everyone's freaking out. It's to get that off of the books. Now the Flyers are retaining 50% of his salary, but to even get half of that bad contract for a dude that wasn't going to play, him and Tortorella's relationship apparently was just it wasn't being repaired. Okay.
Didn't exist. So,
he didn't really play last year. I don't even know how much he played at all. For a guy that really wasn't going to play here, you get 50% of that bad contract off the books. That's huge. And that's all Danny's doing. And he stockpiled draft picks and he nailed this draft class, apparently, past Mitch Cobb. So I like the direction they're going in, man. It's going to be brutal to watch, but at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. Yeah. That's the one thing Now, the question is, like, how long does John Tortorella stick around here? Because they brought him in too early. You're talking about a dude that is built to try to win. He's not built to tank. He's not going to tank games and throw games, etc. So they ended up with the 7th overall pick, essentially. Now, they lucked out, but Does he last through this rebuild? Was he brought in too early? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Nonetheless, it's always fun to talk Flyers when they're semi-relevant, at least.
I think what we can come out of this with, man, so far this offseason for the Flyers, I mean, you can have a little bit of confidence in the future, I would say, at least. They're doing
think
things
just
the right
making
way.
that selection
Yeah.
should give you confidence. That the fact that they're willing to take that risk.
Yeah.
You could look back on this in 5 years and he could still not be here. No, he's never coming over. They still had to take that risk that night.
You have to go for the upside, man.
I will not look back on that and say, well, you see, you could have taken the kid Leonard. This kid never played. Blah, blah, blah. No, you had to take this calculated risk. And again, you just have to feel and be confident that he's going to come here for all the reasons you laid out. All the interviews, the multiple meetings, the fact that he shut other teams out in the top 7 because he wanted to come to Philly. And I loved the final thing he said in his interview on draft night. I forget what the woman had asked him, but he essentially looked at her, smiled, and said, well, I guess that means we'll start winning when I get here. Kid's confident, bro. Kid is confident. He's
it's that Russian.
If you haven't watched anything yet, I'll send you a link or just go on YouTube after the show. Watch 25 seconds of this kid, of his highlight tape. It's gross, dude. And like I said, if Connor Bedard is in last year's draft, next year's draft, the year, whatever, if Michkov is in next year's draft, he is the consensus number 1. And you're talking about him as being a generational talent compared with Ovechkin and Malkin and Panarin and all these all-time greats, right? Instead, all the highlight and spotlight is on Connor Bedard, and he kind of gets this little shadow casted over him. With the risk factored in, he slides a little bit. With that said, we're going to move on here. And we're going to talk some Phils, man, because they brought the brooms out. I forgot my broom, damn it. They took the brooms down to Chi-Town. And took all 3 from the Chicago Cubs. They've now won 9 straight on the road. They are 6 games over 500. And they're playing good ball, bro. And I think, as you alluded to start the show today, it starts with the guys on the mound. Taijuan Walker, again, fantastic last night. 6 strong innings. Scotty, heading into the month of June, I believe he had almost a 5 ERA. It was a high 4. He's almost at a 3.9 now from how great he's been in this 1 month of baseball. He gets through 6, he gives a 1 run, and he had to work out of a lot of jams and not due to his own fault. Kyle Schwarber drops a ball again in left field. Brandon Marsh drops a ball out in center field. Blue Pit, the Phillies made a lot of mistakes behind Taijuan Walker last night, and he pitched out of each and every jam, surrendering 1 run through 6 innings. Marte comes in. He was good. Soto comes in. He threw like 5 pitches and got 3 outs. He was great. And then Kimbrel comes in. He's locked. Dude, Craig Kimbrel is locked down right now. I'll never forget. I think I said it on a show. I tweeted it out. I went to back-to-back Phillies games against the Marlins very early on in the year, if you remember this.
Yeah.
And they lost both. And the second one went to extras. And I remember Kimbrel trotting out for the 10th, right? And you had, at least I had, no sense of confidence that Craig Kimbrel was not going to give up this ghost runner on second base and the Phillies were going to lose this game. And that's exactly what happened. He was terrible. Now, I don't see a world in which Craig Kimbrel is surrendering a run when he steps out onto the mound right now. He's had a total revival on the bump. So the pitchers were great last night. Turner doubles, Steele Sturridge, Schwarber homers again. So
first pitch of the game.
Oh, you people! Why is he leading off? That's why. That's why he's leading off. That's why he has over 20 home runs. That is why. Yeah, the average stinks, and sometimes he makes you want to rip your hair out. The OPS has been up, and he gets all these home runs because he gets all these opportunities and chances and swings and at-bats to hit these home runs. That's why he's leading off. Not to mention, Scotty, I don't know, they're winning. That's all I care about. Since Kyle Schwarber has been put back into the leadoff spot, they're winning. When Kyle Schwarber led off in his first year as a Philadelphia Philly, they went to the World Series. So stop bitching. Oh, my God. Oh, Bryce Harper's not hitting for power. Up, 2-run single up the middle. Oh, dude. Listen, there's complaints to be made. Trey Turner, another mistake the other night on the base paths. Drop balls in the outfield. Schwarber stinks in left. I get it. Topper playing Josh Harrison back-to-back days. I get it. There's things to be mad at. They're winning, Scotty. So shut up.
They're winning a lot in the month of June, man. 18-7 in the month total. You talked about Taijuan Walker, 5 straight wins as a starter. They're rolling right now, and you just got to appreciate the baseball that they're playing. There's no need to nitpick, complain. They've been able to work themselves 6 games above 500 in the month of June. So let's give them a little bit of applause for what they've been able to do and stop complaining so much. I think it may have been Mark Henry last night that I saw tweeted out. This Phillies team is special, man, and they're putting together special performance after special performance. And once again, the bats are not even rolling the way they normally do either. The pitching staff looks out of this world right now. To be honest,
the bats are averaging like 6 runs per game.
But these guys are rolling right now. These guys are taking care of business, and you got to commend them. But just keep it going, right? You got the Nationals up next, another series against a team that you should be able to take advantage of and gain some ground against.
At home.
So they've hit this month. They've had some tough competition mixed in there. It's not even like it's been an easy month.
Oh no,
they've had some good teams that they've run into, man. It's not like these guys are just beating the bottom teams of the league. It's not the case. They're beating good teams. They're just rolling right now, and it's all I really can say about it, because I don't want to sit here and nitpick everything that they didn't do last night.
Listen,
they just got a lot of good things going on. I'm interested to see how they move in this next month, if they can keep that going. If it was just a June thing, we know how things
which would be so weird to me, which would be so unequivocally weird.
The bats are due to get rolling for real, right? Like that's the other side of this. Yes, the pitching has been on fire, but we're due for the bats to get on fire. We're due for Bryce Harper to be better, right? So there's a lot of things that can trickle down and make this Phillies team even more powerful than what they've been of late. But if you're complaining right now, it's odd. I get the lineup. There were complaints about the lineup, I think, last night or the night before.
That's fine. That's fine. And I'm not saying they're not deserved. Listen,
give the credit when they win with that lineup too, though. That's the other side of that.
You can critique and you can analyze and you can think that something should be done because you think it would be better. That's fair. That's what you and I do, right? Yeah. When you podcast, when you talk about a team,
what you're supposed to do.
It's what you're supposed to do. But when you're proven wrong, maybe take your foot off the gas pedal a little bit on that stance. Like, dude, the Kyle Schwarber leadoff thing is unbelievable to me. Everybody hates it. Everybody hates it, Scotty. He is not your prototypical leadoff hitter. I understand. They went to a World Series in year 1 with him as your leadoff hitter. And the moment he was put back into the leadoff spot, they go on a ridiculous 18-6 run in a month. I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't know how to get it through their heads, Scotty, that if you put him in the 5-hole, he's not just going to keep hitting home runs, but now they're going to be 3-run home runs and 2-run. No, he's not. He's going to be a weight in the middle of your line. So think about this, right? Everyone hates the average, right? What happens when you get bases loaded with 2 outs and Kyle Schwarber's up as the 5-hole hitter and he comes up and strikes out? What happens then? Oh, he can't be in the middle of the lineup. You need someone with a better, more consistent bat. They're never going to be happy.
You know what I've realized, maybe it's since I started podcasting, is that I don't know if it's just a Philadelphia fandom, the community, or if it's sports fans as a whole, but nobody really thinks for themselves in a sense. You see things just pick up on Twitter, right? Somebody says, Kyle Schwarber shouldn't be leading off for this reason. And then you see them take that and then they run and they tweet that as well. Kyle Schwarber shouldn't be leading off for this reason. And it's like nobody thinks for themselves. They don't think through things. I noticed it with the Tobias Harris trade thing. It's like, oh, well, one person started saying you can't trade Tobias for this and that. So we can't trade Tobias just to trade him. And now it's all of a sudden everybody's thinking the same way there. It's just so weird. I don't know if it's like the Negadelphia just want to argue and like nitpick every single thing. But obviously the Kyle Schwarber leadoff, rotation, as far as him being leadoff in the rotation there, it's working. It's as simple as that. They're winning games. He's the leader of the clubhouse. Clearly. And there's nothing that excites and motivates this team more than what happened last night when he leads off with a home run. There's no driver of momentum that is bigger than a leadoff home run.
First of all, he hit at least 5 of them this month. He hit at least 5 leadoff home runs that I know of this month. He hit 2 in a series against the A's.
Is that not worth it alone for him to lead off the lineup? Like, is that not worth it alone?
Because the average is never, they're just not going to get it. The average is never going to get better.
So you would rather him have the poor average with runners in scoring position.
Exactly.
And less at-bats.
The home runs are going to tick down with less at-bats and less attempts. But people don't view it that way. Oh,
what, do they want him out of?
Why not get runners on in front of him?
They want him out of the rotation.
Not to mention, Scotty,
out of the lineup completely.
Do people realize for the most part, he only leads off an inning once? And that's to start the game. I mean, after that, there's multiple opportunities where he can come up with 1 out and 2 runners on because the 7 and 9 hitters got on to start the inning. Like, he only leads off the game. And in those opportunities, he has a better chance than anybody of pulling 1 out of the ballpark.
It's as simple as that, man.
Anyway.
Sorry,
I had to go on a little Kyle Schwarber rant because...
No worries.
Listen, he's far from perfect. I do think he could use a day off. For whatever reason, other guys get Marsh gets a day off. Castellanos gets 2 days off. Stott's always out of the lineup. JT, Bone, but it's never Schwarber. And I do think that's a little ridiculous. And he stinks in the field. You saw it again last night. Rear its ugly head. Yeah. Saw him fall down 2 nights ago. He's not good in the field. But the leadoff argument bothers me because we're just never going to see.
What is he here for? You know what I mean? Like, what is he here for if he doesn't lead off? Like, you may as well take him in the 7 hole. Like,
yeah, that's great. Let's put him in the 7 hole so he can hit 188 in the 7 hole with less home runs. That's job well done, fellas. All right, last topic to get through, Scotty. We've talked Sixers, we've talked Flyers, we've talked Phillies. Now we got to wrap it up with some football on this Friday show, and it is our Eagle of the Day on this Friday morning, and we are going to start this with Mr. Nolan Smith on today's show. We've already talked about his teammate, his counterpart, first-round pick, Jalen Carter. He was our first Eagle of the Day. But now let's talk about Nolan. And this kid is so intriguing to me, man, because Carter gets all the spotlight, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
And Nolan Smith was mocked to be here in Philadelphia. But he was mocked to be here in Philadelphia at pick what?
Pick 10.
Right. How's pick 31 grab you? That's where the excitement comes from. You got a guy who at 10, you'd be like, I'm not so excited for it, but I can understand it. And then you get him 21 picks later. And he's kind of flying under the radar with his teammate that's here as well. And you see these videos, right? And they're, maybe they're Ben Simmons, summer workout videos. I don't know. But you see these videos of the workouts and the sled pushes and the edge rush and the speed and the athleticism and the strength and the shape he's got himself in. Scotty, this kid looks like a freak.
Yeah.
And the other intriguing thing to me is not that he's just here with his Georgia Bulldog brothers. It's he was comped to who? Hassan Reddick. Who's on the other side of the line? Oh, Hassan Reddick. So he gets to learn behind the guy he's comped to coming into the league, a guy who's one of the best premier edge rushers in the league. He gets to learn from that all offseason. What are your expectations? Everything I just laid out with what Nolan Smith is kind of flying under. What are your expectations for him this year in 2023?
Yeah, no, I'm excited for this kid. I'm excited to see the way the Eagles are going to use him. I think he's not only an explosive linebacker slash edge, but I think he's versatile too. He has a great athleticism. 6'3", 235. Obviously, a little bit on the lighter side for an edge rusher, similar to Hassan Reddick once again, but 6'3", he's tall. He's built pretty nice, man. From the looks of it to me, he looks really strong. Step. In my opinion, it's going to be interesting to see how he's used in this defense. You mentioned Hassan Reddick. I think that's the perfect guy for him to learn behind. That should be the glowing example in the locker room of what he should try to be. What intrigues me about this kid, man, and maybe it's the same thing with all these kids from Georgia. They all seem to have their heads, the right head on their shoulders, right? This kid, he comes out, he's got an energy to him, right? He has like a contagious energy. You compare him on the field to Hassan Reddick, you compare him off the field, it's like a Brandon Graham. He's not afraid to say what he wants to say. He's very approachable in media. He's good in media.
He's very polite and proper and like.
But then he'll throw the energy at you on the Chris Long podcast and say how he wants to hit a motherfucker, like just out like that. And that's what I love about him. He keeps it professional, but at the same time, you can see he does have that dog in him.
Yeah, he's got that switch that he's easily able.
Like when he's on the field, he's going to be talking a lot of shit, and that's what we love about Brandon Graham. Now, of course, you have to back it up. That's the key. The interesting thing with this, I said I'm interested to see how the Eagles are going to use him. He had 11 and a half sacks in 4 years at Georgia. So he's a guy that can get after the quarterback, but he can also do other things, be used in other ways. The thing with me, the thing that makes me want to temper my expectations is ultimately what else they have there, right? Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat,
What's his snap
Brandon
count?
Graham. Mm-hmm. What is that snap count going to look like? Do they rotate him at linebacker at times and let him play in coverage? We know that Sean Desai is rumored to do that. Maybe they even do it with Hassan Reddick sometimes, similar to Gannon in that respect. But I think, once again, just pinpointing the guys that he gets to learn from is going to be key. You have Brandon Graham. He's a year older at the end of the day. Brandon Graham is a year older. You want to keep him in his form from last year where he got double-digit sacks? You take snaps off his legs.
Keep him fresh for the playoffs, baby.
Exactly. Keep him fresh. Derek Barnett, he'll be back. He's coming off a torn ACL. We don't know what we're going to get from him. Dude. So notch Nolan Smith up another notch, right, over him. I think Nolan Smith, by the end of this season, he will be that I was going to say third pass. I always forget Josh Sweat for some reason. Yeah. Man. He'll be the fourth pass rusher on that edge behind Brandon Graham, but I think they'll probably get around equal snaps towards the end of the season once he gets comfortable. But I'm going to temper my expectations, maybe 2-3 sacks this season, but he'll look good/great in other ways. It's not just going to be the eye-popping number.
I feel you. It's just, again, I do agree that it all comes down to playing time and how much he's on the field and put in that position. But
and where he's going to play,
if he's able to do so a fair amount, Scotty, I think he goes over. Like, the fact that he was rumored to be a top 15 draft pick is what stands out to me. That's why I have so much faith in Nakobe Dean. Now, again, that's different circumstances. Nakobe Dean was all injury concern and blah, blah, blah. But when Nakobe Dean was a projected top 20 pick, you have the confidence that he can step in day one and do his job, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Nolan Smith, he's a first-round pick, but he's 31. He was picked at 31, blah, blah, blah. Why did he slip? Well, when he's projected, 10 at the Eagles, if you go top 10, you hold a certain weight to me. You hold
Yeah.
an expectation to step in day one and be able to not dominate, but to be able to go out there and I don't know. I don't want to hold everybody to a Micah Parsons form, but be able to have such effect, right?
Yeah.
So if he gets the playing time to me, I think Nolan Smith's impact is much greater than we're kind of thinking early on here. If he gets the playing time, who
Yeah.
knows? Like,
It's
dude,
tough
that
to
one
say.
video, the center of gravity for me is like that one video of him bending around, kind of,
Yeah.
swimming around the tackle, but he's so low to the like his knee is almost on the
Yeah.
ground. And then he gets around and boom, right to the quarterback. Like, dude, if that's the type of edge rusher you're getting here, combined with everything else you have on this defensive line, that's scary. And again, it's another thing where, like, how much does all the attention to everybody else help him out production wise early on in his career,
Yeah.
right? Like when you have Hassan Reddick and Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox on the field with him, how much attention's really being paid to little old Nolan Smith over on the side? You know what I mean?
I do. As you were running through that, I was thinking, I once again wondering how they're going to use him. Like, is he going to come in for Hassan Reddick just because
Right.
they are so similar? Where
Right.
Hassan Reddick off the field, he comes in, or are
I'd
they
love
going
to
to
see
pair
them
them up
play
at
together
times?
at times
Yeah.
off the edge. I would.
Like, I'm interested to see, do they keep their edge rush? I can't remember how they worked it last year, if they kept each guy. I know Hassan Reddick stayed on his side, but Josh Sweat, I know he stayed on the left.
Like, I'm just
Did they move
picturing.
Brandon Graham
Right.
around? You know what I mean? Like, I'm interested to see, do they
I think
pinpoint
there is a
Brandon Graham
dynamic.
partnered with Josh Sweat?
I think there's a dynamic in the size scheme where we do know he will drop linebackers back into coverage. Now, Reddick, I don't really need to see drop back into coverage, but we know that Smith can and is willing to do it. He did it well at Georgia, right? So Smith is well more accustomed to dropping back into coverage as a backer than an edge rusher like Hassan Reddick. But I'm intrigued by them on the field together, man, not just across the line from each other and both coming off the edge, but Scotty, like if you can get creative where put them together in a bunch on the left side of the line and run a stunt where they both look like they're coming, but maybe only Hassan comes in a gap and Smith drops back into a little spy. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
different shit like that. You can get really creative with these dual threat kind of linebackers that Nolan Smith is.
It's interesting, man. I'm looking at Micah Parsons in college, and I just wanted to have a frame of reference because it's easy to compare these guys. I'm not
Right.
saying Nolan Smith is going to be Micah Parsons. It's not the case. But what I wanted to point out is just that transition from the NCAA to the NFL, and things are just completely different.
Different.
Schemes are different. Players are used differently. Micah Parsons, there's talk about Nolan Smith being undersized. He's 6'3", 235. Micah Parsons, 6'3", 245. So 10 pounds difference. He's been in the NFL two plus years now. So he's had time to build that weight. But you look at Micah Parsons in college. Now, mind you, he played linebacker. I understand that. 1.5 sacks, 5 sacks in 2 seasons in college. Nolan Smith, I don't think he ever eclipsed above 3.5 sacks in college. But
Right.
my point there is that it doesn't translate that way. In the NFL, there's going to be a lot more passing. There's going to be a lot more opportunities to get after the quarterback.
Yep.
So to your point, that transition could look a lot smoother than what we're expecting just because of what he
Right.
has been known to do in college. That really doesn't matter in a sense. It's more about skill, body type, what he's going to provide and who he's going to be modeled after. And I think, to your point, yeah, I think he could have more than what we expect, especially, if they pinpoint him in. Like, how do you want to organize his plate, right? His first season as a rookie. Do you just want to pinpoint him in as an edge rusher? Just let him pin his ears back when he goes
Right.
out there. He doesn't
Right.
have to think
Do you
about
want to simplify
responsibilities as
what
much.
he wants to do? But he
Or
also
do
seems
you flex it?
so
He
he
seems
also
smart.
seems so intelligent and has a
Yeah.
high football IQ. I mean, dude, if you were going to play for 4 years on that
Yeah.
Georgia defense,
You got to know what's going
you
on.
know what the F you're doing. Nakobe
Yeah.
Dean knows what he's doing, right? So, like, to me, I don't know if he's a guy you really have to simplify it for.
What
Um,
I think that the best way I could put Nolan Smith on this Eagles defense, and you could almost say the same thing about Jalen Carter. That's the crazy thing about this draft for the
Maybe like a
Eagles. But
Trent Cole.
Nolan Smith provides he raises the ceiling on this defensive line, and that's crazy to say because if he is what we think he is, you're just talking about another added element of pass rush. And you think about the loss of Javon Hargrave, the double-digit sacks once again that he was able to provide last year, that pressure up the middle. People are trying to say that the Eagles downgraded on their defensive line, but you add Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. That's 2 players for the price of 1.
And
not
listen,
even the price of 1. They're not even close to being paid like Javon Hargrave, but
listen, I know we're down on him,
1.
But you also get Derek Barnett back.
Yeah.
Dude makes me pull my hair out.
Yeah.
He can still have a handful of sacks on any given year. We don't know. Now, I hate that argument because I do hold these two in Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith to a very high standard right now. Like I know everyone, well, they run a rotation and they're rookies and they're young and will fit. No, F that, dude. Other teams, they get these all-world talents, Micah Parsons. They get these guys and they're in the Defensive Player of the Year conversations. Some are in MVP conversations. I don't need to wait and let Jalen Carter grow. Throw him in the middle of this line and let him be the all-world talent that he is. Nolan Smith was a projected top 15 pick. Throw him out there and let him do what he does. I don't need him to, learn the playbook and learn the size scheme. No, F that, dude. It's literally only here in Philly. Like, I hate that shit so much. Like baseball, right? I'm seeing guys that come up, in a year and a half, in 2 years through these systems, and they're 20 years old and they're ridiculous and they're rookies of the year and blah, blah, blah. But our guys are 24 years old sitting down in AAA. Well, he's still young and he's got it. Dude, he's just not talented enough then, okay? That's the part that pisses me off.
The thing with Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith is one of these guys need to come in and basically say it doesn't matter, right? Like, it doesn't matter the scheme. It doesn't matter me learning the new scheme, me being a rookie. I'm good enough to play full-time right now. One of these guys needs to answer that call. I believe both of them can, to your point. But I would say you look at perspective of potential for these guys and for this draft class, one of these first-round picks needs to turn up and show up like a top 10 draft pick. Obviously, Jalen Carter is the top 10 draft pick. Nolan Smith was rumored to be a top 10 pick as well. One of these guys, I think both can do it. One of these guys needs to come out and, I don't want to say exceed expectations because the expectations are high. Meet the expectations. That's what has to happen. And that's what I think will happen, man. To your point, 2 great additions, 2 young talents. And to your point, once again, we don't have to wait. It's not all the time that we have to sit here and wait for this to come to fruition. Sometimes guys come into the league and they are ready. They're good enough.
Yes.
Jalen Carter, specifically, his body, he's ready. He's NFL built.
Scotty,
Nolan Smith can get there very easily, man.
When you are rumored to be the greatest talent in the draft outside of a quarterback, you need to be ready. You need to play day one. You need
to be ready.
I don't need the training wheels on Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
And I don't think I need them on Nolan Smith. That was the point. So, anyway, that is going to wrap up this Friday edition of the Phaithful Fanatic Show. Everybody, go enjoy your weekend. And the 4th of July, long weekend.
Let me ask you this before we bounce out of here. If Harden is ultimately traded today, I'm thinking we have to go live for that.
Yeah. I'll be
15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be on the road up until about 2 p.m., but then after that, I'm good. So
I wouldn't imagine it would happen before that. I mean, I guess it could happen at any time.
But you never know.
Yeah.
But with that said, that is going to wrap up this edition of the Phaithful Fanatic Show, guys. Go subscribe to the new YouTube channel, DSM Media Philadelphia. Subscribe. It is the new home of the Phaithful Fanatic Show here on DSM. It is also the new home for all of our DSM pre-game lives. for myself, for Scotty, for our friends over at Manscaped. Don't forget, use promo code DSM at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. Again, that is promo code DSM at checkout for 20% off your total order plus free shipping over at manscaped.com. Let them know that DSM sent you. Your balls will certainly thank you. Have a great rest of your weekend. Go Phils, go Birds, go Sixers. I don't know. Go everybody.
All of them. Let's
Have a
get
good
it.
one.
Go Philly.